What you're about to see are the events that led to 4 fatalities and 2 injuries on the Romero fire on October 7, 1971. The fire started at 1545 on Romero Canyon and Bella Vista Road and spread upslope to the north. It had burned 500 acres by 1800. The nighttime down canyon winds pushed the fire southeast into Toro and Oil canyons, above the communities of Summerland and Carpinteria. Fire weather observations at 1400 were temperature 100 degrees, relative humidity 9%, wind southwest at 8 miles per hour, 10-hour fuel stick 1%. Ignition component from the old danger rating system 99. Fuels mixed chaparral over 50 years old. This is fire behavior on the first afternoon, October 6th. You're looking northeast from Summerland. By 1000 on October 7th, the fire had reached the ridge between Arroyo Paredon and Santa Monica Canyons. The north, west, and south portions of the 3,500-acre fire were partially contained. The east flank was completely open, but was holding with retardant drops. This is looking into Santa Monica Canyon with a backing fire on the afternoon of October 7th. Note the heavy fuel and steep terrain. This is a view of the entire fire looking north from Highway 101. The fire is spreading east, or toward the right side of the screen. You're now looking up the ridge near Santa Monica Canyon. This ridge is the location for indirect line construction about to take place. There were 4 contract dozers, each with a U.S. Forest Service dozer boss, assigned to complete the line construction. The dozer bosses had been dispatched as sector bosses, but were reassigned as dozer bosses. The dozers had worked by themselves the night before and were pulling a double shift. The newly assigned dozer bosses had to catch up with the dozers in the afternoon. The dozer bosses did not have a plans sheet or any maps. They were briefed verbally at fire camp. The plan was to construct indirect line on the east side of the fire, up a side ridge to the main Camino Cielo ridge. Firing and holding of the completed line was proposed for the night shift California Department of Forestry hand crews. However, the hand crew supervisor decided to wait and see what the winds would do before committing his crews to the firing and holding operation. The fuels were very heavy, and progress was slow as these fuels had not burned since 1917. Of the 4 contract dozer operators involved, only 1 had extensive wildland firefighting experience and knew local weather patterns. The 3 other operators had little, if any, firefighting experience. The 4 dozer bosses were qualified, but were not familiar with local weather patterns. Communications were not good. There were only 2 local radio frequencies, and this fire was the first time the national cache of handheld radios had been used on the forest. The dozer bosses were assigned 2 radios for the 4 dozers. 1 radio did not work, and the second radio quit working late in the afternoon. The 1430 weather forecast called for down canyon winds late in the evening, with north winds to 15 miles per hour. A 2000 update predicted a heavy marine influence with southerly winds to 8 miles per hour. There were no sundowners predicted for that night. This graph shows high-growth thermograph readings for October 10th. Readings for October 7th, 8th, and 9th were essentially the same. This indicates how rapidly weather conditions deteriorated in less than 12 minutes. Note the abrupt temperature increase and drop in humidity prior to 2000. You're looking east into Santa Monica Canyon. This shows fire activity at about 2100 the night of October 7th. The dozer operators were working their second shift. Fatigue, darkness, and increasing fire activity began to worry them. They decided to return to camp and work back down their fire line to its intersection with the Edison Power Line Road. At the intersection, the experienced local operator recommended they take the Edison Road out However, the other operators had heard that the road was heavily overgrown with brush and was not a good escape route. The experienced operator and his dozer boss thought they had convinced the others to use the Edison Road and began to lead the way out. The three other dozers made the decision to go back up the fire line they had just pushed to a safety zone on top of the ridge by a power line tower. The local experienced operator and his dozer boss hurried west on Edison Road toward a staging area, with spot fires chasing them. They arrived safely. The three dozers that proceeded back up the fire line found themselves trapped short of their safety zone. The last dozer in line was caught by the flames first. The operator jumped off, and the dozer rolled back down to the Edison Road intersection with the fire line. At this point, the situation was as follows. One dozer is out of danger, having taken the Edison Road out. One dozer is abandoned. The dozer highest on the ridge now has two operators on it. The second dozer has one operator and three dozer bosses on it. The fire is on both sides of the ridge, and the dozers are unable to go forward or backward because of the flames and heat impact. Here you see the fire intensity rapidly increasing under sundowner conditions. The time is around 21:30, the night of October 7th. The fire is about 2 to 3 miles away from the camera. Note a firestorm developing, with flames reaching 200 to 300 feet in the air and spotting half a mile ahead of the fire down in the canyon. As the camera looks northeasterly, at the head of Santa Monica Canyon, you see whirlwinds are developing and area ignition is occurring. The roar at this point was deafening to observers 2 miles away. The firestorm pushes a flame front 1/4 to 1/2 mile wide out of Arroyo Paredon Canyon into Santa Monica Canyon and causes a massive whirlwind. The entrapped dozers are just above the intense flames hitting the top of the ridge. The entrapped dozers are now visible on top of the ridge. You're now looking at the same area the morning after the entrapment. Notice the complete consumption of all fuels and the second dozer parked directly above a chimney. The lead dozer was still running when rescue workers arrived. The two contract operators survived by running back and forth around the dozer, using it as a heat barrier to protect themselves. They were dressed in loose, heavy canvas jackets. At the second dozer, the rescue workers found 4 fatalities. 2 individuals were found under the dozer, 1 individual was found behind the blade, and 1 individual was 15 feet from the dozer. The dozer operator had tried to dig a hole for the victims to get into. The dozer was parked on top of the berm and not running. You're looking up the ridge in the area where the dozers were working. Notice the steepness of the slope and narrow ridge. This is the abandoned dozer where it rolled back down the fire line to the intersection with the Edison Road escape route. The fuels in the area are only partially burned, indicating lower intensity fire behavior. The intensity of the fire was enough to cause a power line tower made of metal to twist and collapse. You have just seen the events that occurred on the Romero fire. The instructor will now facilitate a discussion about the use of fire safety guidelines by the involved personnel, the strategic and tactical decisions that were made, and the human factors that contributed to this burnover incident.